Dear students, welcome to lecture number 10 of Economics of Environment and Natural Resources. I am Dr. Jangres Khan. Today we will discuss effluent charges, which is one of the important ways to control the environmental pollution. We know that the pollution around the world is increasing day by day due to the increasing human activities. Due to the economic activities we discussed in the last lectures so many times that the economic activities lead to the negative externalities sometimes, and these pollution is one of such negative externality. As a result of the economic activities, we are having environmental pollution in the form of land pollution, noise pollution, in air pollution, water pollution, different types of the pollutions we have. And due to the immense increase in the pollution, the different countries have planned different ways to control the environmental pollution, and different types of the techniques have been developed to control such type of the environmental pollution. And you know that as we discussed in the last lecture as well, that liability loss was one of such type of the measure to control environmental pollution. Emission standards was another way, and pollution taxes was another method to control the environmental pollution. In short, with increasing pollution throughout the world has encouraged a considerable discussion for improving the environmental degradation. Various policies suggested for this purpose, like emission standard, liabilities laws, and pollution taxes. The effluent charge is an addition in it. Now the question arises, what is effluent charge? An effluent charge is a tax or financial penalty imposed on polluters by government authorities. We can say that effluent charge is nothing but it is just a tax, or it is a financial liability, which is a financial penalty which is imposed on those who emit pollution. The charge is specified on the basis of dollars or cents per unit of effluent emitted into the ambient environment. Now, how it is charged? The effluent charge is levied per unit of the pollution. For example, to pay an effluent charge of $30 per unit of waste material, a firm discharges into a lake. For example, we can say that the government can levy a charge of $0.30 per unit of the waste material it discharges into a lake or into environment or into the land. In Netherlands and local water control boards levy pollution charges on both direct and indirect emitters. The charges are based on measured emissions and actual treatment costs. Effluent charges are used to resolve a wide variety of environmental problems. For example, to address the concern of global warming, a global carbon tax is proposed. According to peers, usually global carbon tax is proposed. It is charged in some countries in order to stop the process of the global warming, which is to stop the pollution. If we stop the pollution, if we control the pollution, we will be able to control the greenhouse gases, we will be able to control the global warming. Now, there are three major attractions of effluent charge. Why effluent charge is an important method of controlling pollution? There are three major attractions. First, it is less dominant than emission standards and operates purely on the idea of financial incentive or disincentive. It is less dominant than the emission standard, and it is totally based on financial incentive or disincentive. Secondly, it is an easy way to administer. Thirdly, it provides firms with incentives to reduce their pollution through improved technological means. If we will discuss in the coming slides, that effluent charge on one way, it plays dual role. On one hand, it controls pollution through giving an incentive to the polluters to control the pollution through own sources, and on the other hand, it is a source of revenue. In order to control the pollution, in order to skip the cost of the paying tax, what the firms do, what the organization will do, that they will use the advanced technology in order to reduce the cleaning costs. Because if they don't clean the costs themselves, what will happen that they will have to pay the effluent tax to the government. Now, a question arises how the effluent charge approach works. We can explain it with a simple example. Suppose a firm is discharging waste into a particular environmental medium, that is air, water, or land. Let me take a picture of this. Yes, it is. Let me show the picture. Yes, look at this picture. Suppose a firm is discharging waste into particular environmental medium, that is air, water, or land. The firm is required to pay an effluent tax of TK or $0.20 per unit of waste discharge. Look at this figure. That the MCC shows the marginal cleaning cost of the curve of the firm. This TK line, this shows the effluent charge, which is fixed at the $20, and this line shows the effluent charge line. Now, looking at this diagram, we see that the MCC curve cuts this effluent charge curve at this point, where the firm is producing 150 units. So what the firm will do, that it would like to discharge 150 units and clean the remaining, that is 400 minus 150, that is 250. This means that if the effluent charge is levied at the rate of $20, then looking at this the curves of this particular firm, we see in this figure that the intersection point is this one. So the firm would like to discharge 150 units and control this area between the 150 and 400, that is 250 units. It will control that one. And we know that at this point where it is producing 150 unit, here the MCC and the effluent charge are equal. The MCC is equal to at this point. Look at here, at this point. We see here. The effluent charge and the MCC are equal, so the firm will control the pollution up to this point, and for these 150 units, it would like to pay the effluent charge. Similarly, beyond this 150, if it produces in the range of 150 to the 400, we will see that MCC is less than effluent charge. So it is an incentive for the firm to produce, to clean it itself. When you move to left hand side of this point, suppose we come here at this point, We see that if the firm produces 75, we see here that the effluent charge is 20 while the MCC is 45. So definitely the firm will not clean the waste itself, but it will prefer to pay the tax. Till the time the MCC and this point is reached where the MCC and the TK is are equal. Coming to the slide, the firm is required to pay a tax of TK, that is 20 per unit of waste discharge. We can see in this figure. MCC, yes, this is MCC is the marginal cost cleaning cost curve of the firm. Again, a private firm would like to produce 150 unit of the would like to discharge 150 up to this point, as discussed earlier. The firm will control 250 units of the waste, that is 400 minus 150. The range between this, the firm will control this, and it will discharge this one into the environment. At this point, the marginal cost, control cost, or the marginal cleaning cost is equal to the predetermined effluent tax. Here we see as both the curves intersect, so at this point the TK and MCC are equal. With this condition is met, the firm has no incentive to reduce its discharge to less than 150 units. It will never produce less than 150 units. If it produces, it will face the cost. To see this, suppose the firm is decided to reduce to 75 units. So we suppose that it is producing 75 units. So as discussed earlier, what will happen that it will have to pay the cleaning cost of 45, which is too higher than the effluent charge. So it will not produce beyond in the range of the 0 and 150, because here the MCC is greater than the effluent charge, and the 45 is greater than the TK $20. Thus, paying tax to discharge the waste would be cheaper for the firm than using its facility. A similar argument can be presented if the firm decides to increase its waste discharge of the level exceeding the 150 units. Because if it produces in this range, what will happen that the effluent charge will be greater than the MCC, so the firm would like to clean its waste itself. In this case, it will be cheaper for the firm to clean the waste using its waste processing facility than to pay tax, because MCC is less than the MCC. We see this curve, this is less than the effluent charge. So the firm would like to adopt its own facility. So simply stated, when the profit maximizing firm is confronted with effluent charge, it will be in its best interest to treat its weight whenever MCC is less than the effluent charge, that is TK is greater than MCC. The firm would cease its effort to control waste when no gain could be realized from any additional activity of this nature, where TK is equal to MCC. At this stage, it is important to note 2 points. First, without the effluent charge, this firm would have no incentive to employ its own resources for the purpose of cleaning waste. Coming back to if there is no effluent charge, if the firm is allowed free, there is no tax, there is no charge, what the firm will do that it will not care for the cleaning environment, but it will produce 400 units and discharging the waste into the environment. In other words, in figure 1, since the service of the environment is considered a free good, there is no effluent charge, this firm would have emitted a total of 400 units of effluent into the environment. An effluent charge reduces pollution because it makes the firm recognize that pollution costs the firm money. In this specific case, rupees 20 per unit of effluent. Secondly, as shown in the figure 1, the effluent charge is set at TK, the total expenditure by the firm to control its own processing technology is represented by area C. The area under MCC, when the firm level is more than 150 units, or the firm chooses to control 225 units. Looking at this diagram again, if the firm want to produce this much of 175 of the discharge 175 units of the waste, so the cleaning cost, we know that the cleaning cost is represented by the area under the MCC shown by the C. In addition, the firm has to pay rupees 20 tax on the 175 units of the waste it has decided to emit into environment, which is represented by A and B. It will not only pay for the cleaning of this, but also pay the tax by as shown by area A plus B, means this plus this. So suppose we say that it is 175 units. So if you multiply 175 by 20, we get $3,500. This means that the firm will pay effluent charge by the area 3,500. So thus the total cost for this firm to dispose is 400 units of the waste will be tax plus total control cost A plus B plus C. This is coming back to the diagram that it will pay tax effluent charge for this A plus B, which is $3,500, plus it will have to bear this cost. So the total cost becomes A plus B plus C. Note that under the effluent charge regime, the public authorities will not only make the firm clean up its waste to some desired level, but also be able to generate tax revenue that could be used for further clean up the environment or for further social objectives. So, dear students, the aim of the effluent charge is that to not only to generate revenue, but also to control the the environment. And this, on one way, the firm have the incentive to clean up its waste, and on the other hand, the money collected in the form of the taxes can be used for further improvement of the environment. This is an important advantage that an effluent charge has over the other emission standards. It is important to note that the firm has the option not to engage in any waste cleanup activity. So, if the firm does not, it is producing 400 and it is not involved in this cleaning of this area by its own sources, then it will have to pay tax up to 400 units, which will be a big amount. If we multiply 400 by this $20, we get the $8,000, which will be very difficult for the firm to pay and not a good incentive. Clearly, this will not be desirable since it entails a net loss of area equal to the point D when compared to the effluent charge scheme. Again, coming to this, that if it doesn't clean its waste by this area, it will have to bear this area D. It will have to pay the effluent charge, which is not a good option, which is not desirable for the firm. So far we have discussed effluent charge on a purely conceptual level and considering only a single firm. But we know that there are many firms in the economy, and there are many emitters, many environmental criminals. Ideally, what we would like the effluent charge to represent is the social cost or per unit basis of an environmental service when it is used as a medium for receiving the emitted waste. For this to happen, the effluent charge needs to be determined by both the damage and control costs into the consideration at an aggregate level. In order to have an exact effluent charge, we have to take into the confidence, and you have to take into account the not only the pollution control cost but also the damage costs. We have figure number 2, where MCC represents the aggregate sum of the marginal cost for all relevant firms or polluting sources. Given the optimal effluent charge TE is attained at the point where FCC is equal to NDC. Let me take a screenshot of this figure in order to clarify the concept. So this is no. So why it is making problems? So look at this diagram. We can see in this diagram the MCC is the marginal control cost or marginal cleaning cost. MDC is the marginal damage cost, as we see in this diagram. The effluent charge can be attained, the optimal effluent charge can be attained where these two curves intersect each other. At this point, we see at this point where by the intersection of MCC and MDC, we get optimal effluent charge, that is TE. In other words, TE is the uniform tax per unit of waste discharge that we need to impose on all firms under consideration, so that collectively they will emit a total amount of waste of not more than WE, the optimal level of waste. If this TE is the optimal level of the effluent charge, the WE is the effluent level of the charge. WE is the optimal level of the waste discharged by all firms. This level of waste is achieved after full consideration of all damage and control costs and from perspective of society at large. This point can be achieved if all the costs are considered. However, obtaining all the information that is necessary to impute the ideal effluent charge would be quite costly. Thus, in practice, policymakers can view this ideal only as a target to be achieved in the long run. Optimal charge can be achieved in long run. So, what we do in the short run is the government authorities determine effluent charge using a trial and error process. What it does that it fixes one level and looks at the result. Then, looking at the result, it improves. It brings a further improvement by changing that that effluent charge till the optimal level is achieved. It is a long run process. Initially, they will start the motion by setting a random charge rate. This rate may not be totally random to the extent that is based on the best possible information about damage and control costs available at that point in time. As stated, dear student, as stated earlier, it is a difficult task it is a very difficult task to get exact information, damage and the pollution control information. However, initially the government fixes the effluent charge by using the available information. Moreover, this initial rate will be adjusted continuously after observing the reaction of the polluters and a new and refined information on damage and control costs become available. The ultimate objective of the government authorities in charge of setting the tax rate is to realize the optimal rate as expeditiously as possible. Thus, more than anything else, require the use of carefully made trial and error process and flexible administrative programs and procedures. So, what we discussed is shown in the figure 2. MCC, the marginal control cost, MDC, the marginal damage cost, intersecting each other at this point, TE, the optimal effluent charge, and WE, the optimal level of the waste. One of the advantages of effluent charge is that it is cost effective. A public instrument such as an effluent charge is cost effective when the implementation of this instrument guides private concerns to allocate their resources in such a way that they are minimizing their pollution control costs. To restate the criterion, the total cost of cleanup given amount of waste is minimized when the marginal control costs are the same for all the private concerns engaged in the in pollution control activities. Now, a question arises why the effluent charge is cost effective or how the effluent charge is cost effective. Under the effluent charge, each firm is charged at a uniform tax per unit of the waste discharge. As discussed earlier, each firm would independently determine its emission rate by equating its marginal cost with the predetermined emission tax TK. Suppose we have 10 firms and they are facing the same effluent charge. As discussed, that each firm faces a uniform tax, that is TK. So each firm would like to equate its MCC to the effluent charge. That is, we have 10 firms, so MCC1 is the marginal control cost of firm number 1. MCC2 is of the 2, MCC3 of the 3. So this means up to the MCC, I'll tell the MCC 9, MCC 10 equal to TK. All the firms, 10 firms, having different marginal control costs like MCC 1, MCC 2, MCC 3, and so on up to MCC 10, they will try to equate, each firm will try to equate its marginal control cost to the effluent charge, that is TK, in order to get the optimum level of the pollution and optimum level of effluent charge. As mentioned earlier, this is precisely the condition for a cost-effective allocation of resources, and its result is effluent charge that automatically minimize the cost of pollution control. This is the MCC naught is the initial marginal control cost curve of a firm, and MCC1 is the marginal control cost of the firm with new technology is adopted, where we see that more pollution is controlled. Let us discuss this diagram. This is indeed a starting and desirable result. Nevertheless, it is important to note that a cost-effective allocation of resources does not necessarily imply a socially optimal allocation of resources. This is because a cost-effective allocation of pollution control requires only that all parties involved in a pollution cleanup activities face the same effluent charge and nothing more. On the other hand, a socially optimal allocation of pollution cleanup proposes a single and uniquely determined effluent charge. As shown in the figure 2, we have shown in the figure 2 that we get the unique rate TE when the MCC is equal to MDC, discussed in the previous slide with detail. It is important to note, however, that T is not necessarily equal to TK. A claim is made that an effluent charge provides firms with incentive to improve their waste control technology. But how? Let's look at this figure number 3. Suppose we have a single firm, a polluter, that is subjected to an effluent charge of TK. This is the TK, which is $5 per unit. We see here the $5 per unit. Similarly, the shift of this from minor cost curve from FCC0 to MCC1 is caused by introduction of new technology or method of pollution control. When new technology to pollution control is adopted, we see the movement of MCC0 to MCC1. You see this area, this. Of course, since the innovation and implementation of new technology costs money, the firm will undertake this project if and only if the expected cost saving from the project are substantial. In general, other factors being equal, the higher the expected cost saving from a given project, the higher the firm's likelihood to adopt the new and improved pollution technology. Having stated this, using the information in the figure number 3, this figure, we can illustrate 2 points. The potential cost saving of our hypothetical firm resulting from the new pollution control technology, and number 2, the fact that when compared to the emission standard, a policy based on effluent charge will provide greater financial incentive to invest in the pollution control technology. So, given the TK represent the effluent charge per unit of emission before introduction of new technology, the firm is discharging 1,000 units. If you look here, the initial MCC of the firm is MCC naught. At this MCC naught level, it intersects this TK at this point. So, initially, the firm is discharging 1,000 units this of waste. Due to the effluent charge, it is controlling 500 of units because the total output is 50. The total waste discharge is 1,500. If it is discharging 1,000, it means that it is controlling 500 units. For discharging 500, the regulatory agency would be able to collect effluent tax of 5,000, which is represented by the area D plus E plus F. Before the introduction of new technology, the authorities will collect for this area. Means D plus E plus F. This will be the tax. And the G plus H is the area for which the firm will bear the expenditure to control the cost. Thus, the total cost of discharging these 1,000 units will be D plus E plus F plus G plus H. This is the total expenditure. By applying a logic similar to that above, it can be shown that if new process technology is adopted, area D plus E plus H represent the total expenditure of the firm. If new technology is adopted, we see that the movement from MCC0 to MCC1, this movement to this. Then what happens that our new area become expenditure D plus E plus H. For the area D, he will pay effluent charge, and for G and H, E plus H is the control cost of the pollution. We see that the relevant MCC is MCC1 because due to improved technology, it moved leftward. Now the question is this cost saving large enough to warrant the adaptation of new technology? Unfortunately, the answer to this question cannot be addressed here. An effluent charge provides strong financial incentive to the firm to adopt new technology than does an emission standard. To see this clearly, suppose emission standard is fixed at 1,000. Now, so we'll come to leave the effluent charge. Let we say that the emission standard is fixed at the 1,000 units. To process the required waste 500 units, the firm total expenditure for controlling waste is represented by G plus H. However, provided the emission standard unchanged, this can be reduced to H if they decide to adopt new technology. If new technology we know that when initially when the old technology is used, G plus H is the control cost, but with the new technology it becomes H only. So the area G represents the cost saving to the firm as a result of adaptation of new technology. Initially, before the introduction of new technology, the total cleaning cost was G plus H. But when the new technology is adopted, the cost becomes only H. This means that G is the saving due to the new technology adopted. Clearly, the magnitude of this saving is smaller than the cost saving that was gained under the effluent system F plus G. Thus, under the effluent tax regime, the saving is greater by area F. Of course, there is no great mystery about this result. Under the effluent charge regime, the firm cost saving is limited not only to the effluent gains in its waste processing plant, but also by what the firm is obliged to pay to the government authorities in the form of effluent tax. To see this, first note that with the new technology, the firm is able to reduce its waste from 1,000 to 400. If new technology is adopted, the waste control becomes 1100 units because it discharges only 400 units. If new technology is adopted, means control of 600 units more. This means that in doing so, the firm is able to reduce its cost by 3,000 because if 600 is controlled, so if you multiply the 600 by 5, we see that by adopting new technology, about $3,000 are saved, and this corresponds to the area E plus F. However, the firm's expenditure to clean up the 600 units using the new technology is only E. Thus, the net saving is the area F. Note that under emission standard there is no saving from tax. The discussion so far clearly indicate that as a public policy instrument, an effluent charge has a good many attractive features. However, the following are some of the major weaknesses of the effluent charge. The effluent, like the other methods, no method is perfect. The effluent charge has also some of the disadvantages, like further waste monitoring and enforcement cost of pollution control policy based on effluent charge could be high, especially when a large number of polluters are scattered over a wide area. The problem becomes that if there are a large number of the firms, then it will be very difficult to monitor the waste discharged by each firm and to enforce the firms, to compel the firms to clean up the waste and collect revenue, collect the tax from it. It will, especially if the firms are scattered over a wide area in the different regions of the country. That has been compared to an emission standard setting. An effluent charge requires the gathering and monitoring of more refined and detailed information from each pollution source, since the effluent charge requires the processing of both financial and technological information. Second, an effluent charge can rightly be viewed as an emission tax. The question is then who actually ends up with paying this tax. This is a relevant issue because firms could pass on this tax to the consumers by charging a higher price to the consumer of their products. The question arises, who will end the pay? Who will be the last effective of this tax? The firm can aid this effluent charge into the prices, thereby charging a higher price to the consumers. Furthermore, how does the tax impact consumers in a variety of socio-economic conditions? For instance, the poor versus the rich and black versus white. This is an important issue. What this want us is that we need to be aware of the income distribution effect of the effluent charge. It is important to note that an effluent charge generates revenue. If government adopts a policy that is fiscally neutral, the revenue raised by taxes on pollution can be viewed to correct the income distribution of any other negative effect caused by the tax. Some argue that it is important to be mindful about the double dividend feature of the pollution tax. Third, we have already seen that an effluent charge automatically leads to the minimization of the pollution control costs. However, when an effluent charge is cost effective in this specific way, this itself does not imply optimality. Never an effluent charge produces an optimal outcome or not depend entirely on the choice of appropriate effluent tax. The determination of this requires not just pollution control, but the simultaneous consideration of both control and damage cost. And number fourth, because of the amount of the detailed information needed to estimate the appropriate charge in practice, an effluent charge is set on trial and error method because it is very difficult to collect the exact information about the firms, about the pollution control costs, about the damage costs. So that is the reason that the effluent charge is levied on trial and error basis. Furthermore, in some situations, such as where significant regional differences in the ecological conditions exist, optimality may require imposing a non-uniform effluent charge policy. For example, the correct level of carbon tax imposed to control greenhouse gas emissions may vary in different countries of the European Union. Situations of this nature clearly aid to the problem of imposing appropriate absolute level of charges in relation to level and nature of emission caused by each source. And number fifth, effluent charges are financially disincentive given to the polluters. This system did not say that it is morally wrong to knowingly engage in pollution of the environment. It simply states that one is permitted to pollute, provided one pays the addressed penalty for an activity. Of course, the justification of this is that damage to the environment can be restored using the money generated by penalizing the polluters. There is a big difference between protecting the natural environment from harm and repairing it after it has been damaged. The fact that effluent charge is a trial and error basis has been a source of considerable concern for the economists. The upshot of this concern has been the development of an alternative policy instrument to control pollution, namely traceable emission permits. This tool, the subject of this tool will be discussed in some later lectures, and the lecture was based on the material taken from the Hussein 2004. Therefore, after viewing this video, you should give a look to the relevant chapter in the Hussein M 2004. Thank you very much.